Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Tigers Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schulte. This episode being recorded on Monday, September 9th, 2024. Let's get into it. Let's start out with the injury report because there's some good news on that front. Wenceel Perez started a rehab assignment last week, as did Reese Olson. Reese Olson went 2 innings through 39 pitches. Looked relatively decent. Not much to report on Wenceel Perez, but look, when he's ready to come back, I'm thinking the move is going to be that Justin Henry Malloy goes down and he comes back up, but you never know. It's really tough with obliques. It's very tough with obliques. So it's hard to say what they're going to do. Even if he gets back this season, it's you just don't know. So so there is that. But Reese Olson looked good in his first rehab start. So we'll see if they get him back within the next 3 weeks. Yes, folks, there's only 3 weeks left in the baseball season now. That's barring, let's be realistic, a miracle. To get into the playoffs, but it's not impossible. Detroit's 3.5 back of the third wild card spot. That belongs to Minnesota, so we'll get into that in just a moment. But before that, let's say goodbye to Joey Wentz. He is no longer a Tiger. He was designated for assignment. Now, the way that works is if you're designated for assignment, I think it's 5 days that you're on the waiver wire. And if nobody claims you after 5 days, you're either granted your outright release or you're outrighted to AAA. He was put on waivers on Sunday, September. Yeah, he was put on waivers on September 1st, I believe. On Wednesday of last week, he was claimed off of waivers by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Joey Wentz, was nice knowing you. See you, bye. Look, good luck. Hopefully you have a good career. Just hopefully you pitch like garbage against the Tigers, because that's just the way it's supposed to go. You can pitch well against everybody else, especially our Central Division opponents. But just don't pitch well against the Tigers. So, now let's get into playoff scenarios. And I'm going to get into this because there's really not much to talk about other than the fact that Detroit went 3-3 on the road last week against San Diego and Oakland. Good to see them take 2 out of 3 in Oakland the last time they were at the Oakland Coliseum. They will be going to play at whatever AAA affiliate stadium the Athletics decide to play at next year until they finally get financing and get a stadium built in Las Vegas. Right now, the Athletics are a team without a home, which is sad, but I couldn't stand that stadium anyway. So with all that being said, Detroit drops 2 out of 3 to San Diego. Parker Meadows with the game-winning grand slam on Thursday to salvage a game out of that series. Oddly enough, Detroit got a no decision for Tarik Skubal on Friday and lost that game in 13 innings to Oakland, but they came back and won Saturday, and they won yesterday in convincing fashion. Trey Sweeney went 4 for 4 yesterday, including a home run and a couple of runs scored. So that was good. So let's talk about this playoff scenario. The playoff scenario starts today, and the scoreboard watching starts today. And here is why. Detroit is 73-71. Minnesota is 76-67. Now you do the math. Detroit is 3.5 games back of Minnesota for the final wild card spot in the American League. Basic scenarios are saying from people that Minnesota or Detroit has to go 13-5 and win 86 games, 12-6 or 13-5 over the next 18 games. Minnesota has a game in hand on Detroit. That advantage goes away tonight. Well, tonight and Thursday. Basically, here's how the schedule looks. Minnesota has 3 against the Dodgers tonight, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They've got the Cincinnati Reds. They've got a 4-game series in Cleveland next Monday through Thursday. Then they've got the Boston Red Sox next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The week after that is Miami and Baltimore. And I think it's kind of funny that my screen reader sees Miami's, the 3 letters for the Miami designation, which is MIA, and says missing in action, because that's pretty much the Miami Marlins. Anyway, with all that being said, so this is Minnesota's schedule over the next 19 games. They've got 19 games left, 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against the Reds, 4 against the Guardians, 3 against the Marlins, 3 against the Orioles. The bottom line is they got to win 10 out of those next 19 to clinch a wild card berth. Now, mind you, they are also 5 games behind Cleveland fighting for the division. They're behind Kansas City as well, but they're still fighting for the division. It doesn't look promising with them having to face the Dodgers, the Orioles, the Red Sox. But the Reds and Marlins, and the Guardians, like, that's a gauntlet to have to go through. But by the time Baltimore comes into town, they'll have probably clinched the playoff berth. They'll still be battling for the division, I suppose. But we'll see. By the time they play Boston, that series may be meaningless because Boston may be completely out of the wild card race at that point. Boston is 4.5 games back. They are behind Detroit now. So that's Minnesota's schedule over the next 19 games. They basically got to go 10-9 in those 19 games to hold off Detroit. Detroit needs to go 13-5 or 12-6. They're saying 85 to 86 wins. I think 11-7 is possible. I don't see 12-6. And here's Detroit's schedule over the next. They've got 18 games left. Minnesota 19, Detroit 18. Detroit has this week at home, Colorado tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Baltimore, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Next week, Kansas City, Baltimore on the road. The week after that, Tampa, Chicago at home. The White Sox, not the Cubs. Can they take 2 out of 3 from Colorado this week? Absolutely. Can they sweep Colorado this week? Absolutely. If they can go 6-6 over the next 12 games, they've got a puncher's chance. If they go 7-5, they've got a heck of a shot. And here's why I say that. You got to take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore either this week or next week. You've got to take 2 out of 3 from Kansas City next week if you want to get into the playoffs. You got to take care of your business. You got to sweep the Rockies. You got to sweep the Rays, and you got to sweep the White Sox. That's 9 wins right there if you do that. If you can get 3 wins, preferably 4, preferably 5. I'm going to get greedy and say 5. But if you can get 3 wins out of those 9 games between Kansas City and Baltimore, you're in. You're in. That's 85 wins. You're in. I still think they go 11-7. I think Detroit finishes the year 84-78. 6 games over 500. But considering that they were 6 games under last year, that's a 12-game turnaround in the season. I'll take it. Would I have liked to have seen them win the division? Yeah, I picked them to win the division. Would I like to see them make the playoffs? Heck yeah, I would. They're capable of it. The question is can they do it? The question is what is Kansas City going to be like at home next week in Kansas City? Vinny Pasquantino is out for the year. Does Kansas City have enough pitching to make up for the Vinny Pasquantino loss? Can Bobby Witt Jr. be that guy for long enough to make that Vinny Pasquantino loss negligible? It's going to be noticeable, but how noticeable is it going to be if Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez perform up to their standards? That's the big, bad, burning question. And the only way we're going to find out is to watch these next 18 games and see. Kansas City's struggling, folks. Kansas City's had an interesting week. Okay. They sweep Minnesota, but they had a 7-game losing streak before that. So the odds of this team making the playoffs, that this team being the Tigers, the odds of this team making the playoffs, look, they're long. They're very long odds. The odds of this team finishing above 500 are really good. All you got to do is finish 82-80. If they want to do that, they just need to play 500 baseball for the next 18 games. And that's something that they should be able to do without any issues. This team is going to finish above 500. You go 3-3 on the homestand. If you go 2-4 on the road, then you're at 500 still. And then all you got to do is go 3-3 in the last homestand. And look, you basically have to say, okay, we're going to lose 2 to the Rays. We're going to lose 1 to the Rays and 2 to the White Sox, or 2 to the Rays and 1 to the White Sox. Now, to be fair to the White Sox, at that point, they're probably playing. They've already probably set the record for losses. They've got 111 losses. Over the next 18 games, they need to go 10-8. To keep from getting to 120 losses. They're not going to do that. This team is going to get to 120. Question is do they get to 121? By the time the last weekend of the season rolls around, we'll have the answer to that. Because they'll have either done it or they'll have prevented it. I don't think those last 3 games are going to have the White Sox at 39 and 118. Or whatever it is. I don't think those last 3 games are going to be like, if you win one of those next 3 of these next 3, you'll keep from having the worst record of all time. You'll keep from tying the Mets. I think that'll have already been decided at that point. So I don't think they'll have anything to play for. Now Detroit might, and that might get the White Sox that might spark the White Sox a little bit. Or they beat Boston last night 7-2. So that might spark them a little bit, but we'll see. And Tampa Bay is just not. Look, Detroit handled them earlier this year in Tampa. They should play them well at home. Like I said, they should sweep the Rockies. If they sweep the Rockies this week, that improves their chances of making the playoffs dramatically. Again, if you go 3-3 on this homestand, that's great. If you go 4-2 on this homestand, that's amazing. I don't see Baltimore coming in here and sweeping Detroit. I really don't. They might win the series, but I don't think they sweep Detroit. I don't think they sweep Detroit next week either. I don't think Kansas City sweeps Detroit next week. I think between those three series, Detroit goes 3-6. So I think they've got enough to finish above 500. I just don't know if they've got enough to make the playoffs now. Now, if Minnesota keeps losing, that's probable. Because, again, Minnesota's got 3 against the Dodgers. The Reds and the Marlins are the 2 easy teams in that easy series in that schedule. They got the Dodgers, 4 against the Guardians. That's going to make or break their season. That's where they'll make the playoffs. If they can split with the Guardians, they make the playoffs. They lose 3 out of 4 to the Guardians, or they get swept by the Guardians. They're in Cleveland, by the way, for that series. Then their playoff hopes are done. The Guardians, Red Sox, and Orioles are the difficult teams on that schedule. They got the Dodgers starting today as well. Out of their next 19 games, 13 of them are against the Dodgers, Orioles, Red Sox, and Guardians. That's not going to be an easy row to hoe, folks. I honestly like Detroit's chances better just because Detroit's got 9 of their next 18 against Tampa, Colorado, and Chicago. The games that worry me are the 9 against Kansas City and Baltimore. I want to apologize because I thought Detroit had taken 7 out of 13 from Minnesota. I guess I was wrong. I guess Detroit took 6 out of 13 from Minnesota. But still, look, Detroit needed to have the divisional record last year that they had last year. Detroit needed to beat everybody in the division this year instead of last year and played the same kind of baseball that they're playing now. That would have been fine. But it's not what happened. So here we are. I want to thank YouTube for hosting my channel. Like and subscribe, please. Hit that bell to get personal notifications whenever I put up a post. I appreciate it. I also want to encourage you to get in touch with the show if you can, if you want to. You most definitely can. Tigers Baseball Podcast at gmail.com. It's the world's longest email address. I'm proud of that. There's also Twitter at Podcast Tigers. You can get me on Mastodon at TB Podcast at tweezcake.social. So there you go. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we're talking about a winning week. Hopefully we're talking about better odds for the Tigers to make the playoffs. We'll catch up with you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and go Tigers.